Welcome and thank you all for coming. Again, my name is Bertrand Evans Taylor, and I'm the Director of Government Affairs here at Dance USA. I'm sure that you all know Dance USA serves as the national service organization for the professional dance field. And one of its core roles is advocating for public policies that strengthen the dance ecosystem through coalition work, direct engagement with lawmakers, and member mobilization. Dance USA represents the needs and priorities of the dance community at the federal level of government. We monitor policy changes, speak up on behalf of the field, and equip dance professionals like you all to take action when it matters most. As you can see on the goals for today's session, for you all to leave with a foundational understanding of government advocacy and its mechanics, to have a bit more insight into the national and local arts advocacy ecosystem, gain some clarity on how to engage meaningfully, even as individuals, with this larger government system, and to feel a bit more motivated to contact your elected officials at what's proving to be a pretty critical political moment. I'm going to get right into it. I would like you all to ask yourselves, what do you think of when you hear the word advocacy? Hopefully, this will have you a bit fired up and ready to go by the end of it. And after this session, we'll be uploading Advocacy 102 to our YouTube for you to continue learning and go a bit more in depth. In that session, it's pre-recorded, and that session focuses on providing you with advocacy skills that'll be useful advocating in the government, but also in the studio for yourself as an employee or as a dancer, as a contractor. So I think that that will be a pretty interesting session for you as well. Using advocacy to Aubrey means using your platform to speak truth to power. That's a great way of putting it. Thank you. Abdo says messaging about better and fair policy. That's very true. Is Kira or Kyra, excuse me if I said it wrong, exemplifying and implementing the future you hope to see? Yeah, that's a great way of putting it as well. Sometimes you have to live in the future you want to create. So these are really great examples. And I want to be a bit more specific just because I know that because all of these things are true, I want to clarify what we'll be talking about here in this specific session. I think it's Shazale. I apologize if that's wrong. Support, awareness, and education. Those are all true. And that's the thing about advocacy as a term. It means a lot of things. I think the most basic definition would be that it's speaking out to make a change. In my specific role, and when you hear arts advocacy as like term or a field or a sector, it's often referring to a formal method of engaging with the government, often through lobbying and through education, to ask them to change specific policies within the government. Now, that can be laws, but it also can be rules and regulations within specific agencies. And it can be even a bit more broader, just having changing minds, giving people more insight into what's going on in the arts so that when they do make policy, they have a better understanding of how it might affect us. And that's done in a bunch of different ways. On your handout, I identified four of them. Grassroots advocacy, which is, I think, the most common, the thing that people are most familiar with. Grassroots advocacy involves everyday people, i.e., the constituents of these government officials, talking directly to their elected officials. So that's your letter writing, your phone calls. That's going to have a meeting with your elected official, showing that this is a popular or unpopular policy by the sheer numbers of people who disagree and have something to say about it. Now, grasstops advocacy is sort of using an influence campaign. So it may not be about numbers, but it's about who it is that's opposing it. So this can be what's popular now, like using influencer or influencer marketing. So like Mr. Beast, the most popular YouTuber, he's based in North Carolina, right? So if Mr. Beast has something to say about North Carolina policy, the governor might care more than me, who doesn't even live in North Carolina. I live in South Carolina. But even someone who does live in North Carolina, they may not have as much influence as a Mr. Beast. But this can also be Al Sharpton, someone like him who is known in the social justice movement and like has been known to show up when specific things happen. If Al Sharpton's showing up, you're probably going to want to meet with him, right? That's a great example of grass tops advocacy. Now, lobbying, which is something that I do, I'm a registered lobbyist in the federal government. That refers to direct attempts to influence legislation or policy decisions, usually involving paid professionals and registered lobbyists. As you all know, this is my job. I'm a paid professional, and I get paid to go to Congress, among other things, to help influence specific policy. Lobbying has a bad rap in a lot of ways because there are lobbyists who don't follow regulations in terms of like briberies. But there's also lobbyists who their organization's entire purpose is to lobby the government. And when there aren't regulations on how much an organization can spend on these lobbying firms, um, they can get outsized influence in the government. However, here at Dance USA, we are some of the few organizations, and we'll talk about what organizations those are within the dance ecosystem to represent the entire country, right? And so, lobbying is key to try when you're trying to make direct influence and you're trying to educate lawmakers on the ways in which their policies affect us. You can lobby, you can be a lobbyist, but your organization can also lobby. It's a misunderstanding that 501c3s cannot lobby. They can, however, it cannot be a majority of their activities. And to that, they also have to be nonpartisan. So you can support issues that are directly related to your mission, but you cannot support candidates. And I think that that helps us because the arts is not a partisan issue in the first place. And so we will talk to Republicans just like we will talk to Democrats to ask them to support the arts. And right now we're in a moment where that's what's required. Um, and so then educating. And that often is less agenda driven and more about letting them know what, like I've been saying, what's going on with us, and what is important to us and what factors make a difference in our lives. And like it says in the handout, that's laying the groundwork for future lobbying without making a direct ask. Right now, as constituents, all of you have representatives. If you live in Puerto Rico, Guam, another territory, or DC, you may not have the same level of federal representation, but you do have representatives at your local level, state level, um, governors, council members that also can make pretty significant changes to things that matter to you. And right now, what we're hearing from the Hill is that they don't really want to hear from lobbyists nearly as much as they want to hear from their constituents. And that's especially true when you're asking Republicans to go against the president, President Trump, because as is pretty clear at this point, the president has a lot of influence over the Republican Party as a leader. If you're asking a Republican to go against what he wants you to do, really the only excuse that's going to fly is your constituents spoke up and they said that they don't want this and that it will have a bad effect in their specific district, in their specific state. And so it's really important. And the reason we're doing Advocacy 101 is that it you all need to speak up. I will, and so right now, I've been focusing a lot on capacity building and helping you all have what you need to speak up. But my voice is not going to be valued in the way that your voice will be. And so I think that's really important to understand. And so one thing that I'm realizing is that you all are not in government affairs and probably aren't taking meetings on a weekly or monthly basis with organizations outside of the dance ecosystem. And so one thing I really wanted to go over is some of what's happening in the arts advocacy ecosystem across the arts. I think we do a good job and we try really hard to work in coalition with each other so that we're not duplicating each other's work, so that we're on the same page about the policy, our policy needs, so that we can boost our own capacity. Because unlike organizations that may have three government affairs officials in their one organization, I'm part time. And many of the government affairs people at other organizations may be full time, but government affairs is not their only focus. As an arts ecosystem, as a sector, it benefits us to work together. And that's on top of the fact that when you're talking to a lawmaker who is not an artist, if they fund theater, if they fund dance, if they fund music, in their heads, they funded the arts, right? They did something for the arts. And so we really try to make sure that when things are happening for one of us, they're happening for all of us, so that we can all benefit from policies that work for all of us. Some of the key players in that, of course, Dance USA, Americans for the Arts, who you might have heard of. They are one of the few arts organizations on the federal level that focus on arts advocacy. And they do a lot of work to get the message out there. And they have a lot of built up relationships within Congress. And then there's the Performing Arts Alliance, which is an organization made up of art service organizations like Dance USA, that of which Dance USA is a founding member. And we advocate together and we meet on a regular basis throughout the year to ensure that we are on the same page and advocating for the same things and also sharing information. So that's made up of organizations like the International Association of Blacks in Dance, the Association of Performing Arts Professionals, the Theater Communications Group, Chorus America. And I don't know if you all remember Amy Federer, the last executive director of Dance USA, but she's actually a contractor at Chorus America doing government affairs work there. The National Association of Latino Arts and Cultures, the National Performance Network, Opera America, League of American Orchestras, the American Alliance for Theater and Education, New Music USA, among other ones. Opera America, League of American Orchestras, Chorus America, Theater Communications Group, and the Association of Performing Arts Professionals. They all have staff that's working directly on government affairs issues. And we work together a bit more closely than some of our other colleagues to strategize and to be on the same page. We also share some resources in terms of like subscriptions and access to advocacy tools that are useful to all of us. And so we are in the closest alliance with those organizations. But there's also the National Assembly of State Arts Agencies, which is 50 state art agencies that come together to strategize and be on the same page themselves. And then there's also your regional arts agencies and your local arts agencies. The regional arts agencies are in coalition with the rest of us, and your local arts agencies often do some advocacy, but of course, they're focused more so on the local level. And then there's the Cultural Advocacy Group, which is a coalition of national arts and culture organizations that collaborate to advance federal policies supporting the art. And that's made up of kind of all the organizations that I've mentioned so far, and then other ones, for example, museum support organizations, as well as organizations that might be supported by the National Endowment for the Humanities rather than the National Endowment for the Arts. And so that's a very broad coalition. We meet at least monthly, but we also have issue-based working groups that focus on very specific issues. If you're going to be in my next webinar at 1:45, I'll go over some of those issues that we're covering. Many of the organizations listed above collaborate as part of formal and informal coalitions. Like I said, the Performing Arts Alliance focuses on uniting performing arts disciplines in federal policy conversations. But also, all of these coalitions enable organizations with different missions, but overlapping policy interests to align, amplify their voices, and ensure that policymakers hear a unified message. And so what that means practically is that we draft joint letters to Congress and federal agencies. We coordinate visits and meetings with legislative offices. We share alerts and action campaigns, and we collaborate on data collection and storytelling to help make a case for support. And in terms of making systemic change, like I said earlier, this type of collaboration is essential, but it also helps lighten the load. As an advocate, you don't need to do this by yourself, and I recommend that you don't. And so plugging into coalitions, you can extend your reach and influence without duplicating the efforts that are already happening. And so for any issue that you think is key, whether on local, state, or federal level, your first question should be, are there any coalitions working on this already? And a good way of finding them is by finding organizations that work on these issues and just asking, like, say, hey, my name is Bertrand Evans Taylor. I'm with Dance USA, or I'm just an individual interested in this issue. I was wondering if there are any coalitions that you're a part of that I can participate in and add my efforts to. And the importance about this is that often these are long games. And so you don't want to burn yourself out and you don't want to reinvent the wheel. So one thing that you might have noticed I've been saying a lot is national, federal, and that's because that's our primary focus at Dance USA, the United States of America. And so as a result, my work is on the federal level. And while this is meaningful and important, especially now, given everything that's going on, it's also important to focus on the state and local level, which is outside of my scope, but maybe well within your scope. I think some really great statewide organizations, such as, I think it's Mass Creative in Massachusetts, they do really good work. Here in South Carolina, we have South Carolina Arts Alliance is what it's called. They're really great. And so with a quick Google search, you can find what arts advocacy organizations exist in your state. Let's see, and Abdo says in Minnesota, there's the Minnesota Citizens for the Arts. And so you can find yours and plug in there. And that's going to be really key because if we're not looking at federal support, we're looking at state and local support. So it's going to be critical that you go to them and explain, like, listen, the federal government's not supporting us. We do XYZ for your state. that may be economic, that may be cultural, that may be tourism, but also just we make this state a great place to live. And we need your support. And then on the local level, it's the same thing, but locally. What's also really cool about that is that because it's a smaller scope, your influence is going to be felt a lot bigger. And I would be remiss on the local level if I didn't mention Dance NYC, who's doing some incredible things in New York City. And right now in New York, y'all are experiencing some really cool changes in your arts budget, and it's actually being baselined right now. And Dance NYC was a part of that effort. So, like, really, really tap into what's going on in your local and state areas as well as regional. Like I said, the regional agencies are participating in advocacy. Each one has some really incredible things going on. Lending your support to that effort is going to take you really, really far, especially if we're looking at a more conservative future that believes in a small federal government and a more robust state and local governmental support. Let's just talk more about the things that you can do now that you have all that information. Like I said before, please contact your Congress people. Please contact your state Congress people. Please contact your city council. If you have an arts commission in your city, contact them. Let everyone know who you are, where you work, the kind of work that you do. And at the very least, let them know that you're a resource to them, that you're a subject matter expert. If something comes up, they can call you to ask what your take on it is. That's just the basics of building a relationship. If you are a dance company or a presenter, invite them to your shows. Make sure, and we have resources on our website about what nonprofits can do in terms of lobbying and the specific rules around that. Make sure you understand the laws because you can't just gift them tickets per se. So make sure you understand the regulations that go into all of that, but invite them to your things, invite them to your Christmas parties, invite them to anything that's free. Build that relationship so that the first time you're talking to them isn't like, oh, I don't like what you're doing. I don't like what's going on. But if that's what it is, that's what it is. Like they still owe you their ear, and your calls do make a difference. Every day, the intern goes through all of these communications, and at the very least, they keep a tally of what issues people are calling and writing about. When I send you all those emails saying, like, contact your congressperson, like that stuff really does make a difference. And it brings people to the table. We've seen a few examples in just the past few weeks. I don't know if you all heard of that HR 9495 bill that would give the president a lot more leniency to be able to take away people's nonprofit status. It first came out last year in December. A lot of us asked people to contact Congress, and the bill failed. And then they tried it again in the most recent tax bill. And we contacted y'all and told them, like, this isn't it. And it came out of the tax bill again. And so sometimes it can feel like anything we do is useless, but that's just not true. Some simple ways you can take action is you can sign up for alerts. I send out action alerts to the Dance USA, what am I trying to say? The Dance USA mailing list, but I also have my own mailing list that I will send more niche issues, I think is the best way of putting it. But go to town halls, go to your city council's town halls and tell them, like, hey, my org is at risk. We're having like serious problems. We were just starting to find our footing after COVID. We're having all of our federal support just swept out from under our feet. Whatever your narrative is, even if it's positive, like please don't only come to them with negative things. If you have positive things, tell them that too. Like especially if they contributed to that positive stuff. They want to know. And like everyone likes knowing that like what they're doing is helping the people that they serve. And don't feel like you can only talk to the representative. If you ask for a meeting and the meeting ends up being a staff member, that is totally fine. Because those staff members are key parts of the decision making process, and your voice is being heard. So please share your story with them. And like I said, engage with your local arts agency because they are, depending on where you are, they might be a nonprofit, they might be part of the government, or somewhere in between. They really have their finger on the pulse of what's going on in your area. In New York, there's one for each borough. So like that's going to be like a key part. And so I am going to share my screen and just show y'all like how easy this is. This here is a advocacy alert that I sent out, and this is after you click the contact your congressperson link in the email, and it'll take you to the Performing Arts Alliance website. Support the nonprofit sector. And this one's about the House tax bill that just came out, and this is a little information about it. And you can either write or call. If you decide to call, you just put your information in and they'll give you a phone script of exactly what to say. And if you write it, it'll give you some stuff to start with. But like, we also encourage you to personalize it, like give more details about how it affects you. And then you just click send. And it's really that easy. And if you'd like, you can call and follow up with them. They take meetings at their local offices. If you know you're going to be in DC for something, you can always ask for a meeting during that time. And you can also, like, if you want to go to the presidential inauguration, that's who you would contact. I went to the Obama inauguration in 2012. And then afterwards, my senator was hosting a welcome party, and we went to his office, and that's how I met Tim Scott. And so, like, there's a lot of different ways that you can engage with your Congress people, but please do, because that's what's going to matter more than anything right now. So we have about 7 more minutes. That concludes my prepared portion, but I would definitely like to know what's still unclear for you. Are there any barriers that exist that we can talk through that prevent you from speaking out? What do you think about right now?
Hey, Bertrand. Thanks. This is Aubrey from American Ballet Theater. Thank you for the presentation. It's helpful. I just wanted your thoughts on, retaliation. I really can't get out there and say what I really mean because I work for American Ballet Theater with the nation's ballet company. And if I say anything outside of the usual, I could jeopardize the entire company and cause a storm. So that's what we feel here. Am I wrong about that? Should we be concerned about that kind of retaliation?
So, to clarify, do you mean speaking out as an individual or speaking out as an organization?
As an individual, if I were to join an advocacy group and do some work on really making things happen, my affiliation with the
Mm,
company.
I can understand that. There's a few different ways you can cut that. I think the most conservative, not politically conservative, but like risk averse answer would be you can support from the background. You can do like admin work, you can facilitate meetings, just be explicit. Like, I have a job, they are a public facing company, so I don't want my organizational affiliation to come into the work that we're doing. And then I think a more radical idea would be that like risk is part of the game. Um, and you do have to calculate what risk you're willing to accept and what risk you're not. And that might be a conversation you have with ABT. Like, hey, I really want to speak out about this. And I feel as if our policies are holding me back from that. How can we find like a happy medium? Because it might be a policy change on their part. It might be, and this is general, not like I've met folks at ABT, including you. I'm not involved in their policy making. It might be policy on their part changing. It might be, oh, well, you know what, you're right. We'll speak out about this too. We know that you're doing this, and we're giving you permission because we know what it's about. But it might be like, here's the guidance for how to do it. Like, I can tell you, I used to be in the military. And I was in the military in 2020. And so when the Black Lives Matter protests started, they sent out guidance like, we can't stop you as a private citizen from protesting, but do not show up in Army uniform, do not show up with army shirts on. Don't say you're a representative of the federal government or the military. And so it might be they need to make a policy about how you can engage in your private life. Of course, it depends on the issue, but I would say that you can always just tell people where you're at, like, hey, I need this job, right? And I just can't lose my job, so please keep my name off of public facing things. And don't tell people that I work at ABT. Did I answer your question?
Yes, thank you. That makes a lot of sense to me, for sure.
Okay, great. And then S. Burton asks, is it best to define when you are speaking for yourself versus your place of employment always? I think so. Like, as someone who often speaks on the positions of Dance USA, I try to be very careful about when I'm speaking about my opinion versus Dance USA's actual stance. And right now, we're in a time where there's a lot of scrutiny on people who are speaking against the government. And so I would be like, don't be afraid, but do be careful with your words. Be intentional and say what you mean and be specific about it. And that's not to say, like I said, that's not to say don't speak out. That's to say, make sure that you're careful and intentional with how you speak out. Is it Ruben or Ruben?
Hi. Well, thank you for the great presentation. I'm learning a lot. I'm an indigenous artist from Peru. I'm a teacher from Peru, and I came here in 2004. I think so. I was blessed to work here in United States as a teacher. But being indigenous, many people encouraged me to promote indigenous cultures here. And I was doing since 2004 from my pocket, right? When I did my master program, I created non-profit organizations because I was working with many different like institutions, cultural institutions like museums, college, libraries, right? Educating people all the time with that way, right? But now after 2020, I started writing grants and until until now I didn't get any grant any grants and I was here because I want to ask you how can you help in front of the system, right? Sometimes systems broke and system is closed for in my opinion for Peruvian culture because there are many cultures here that they already obtained many grants and they have museums, they have many things. I wish to make that in the future, right, in a long term, but it's very difficult when maybe my population is not too much, but I was creating this world for 18 years from my pocket, putting everything free for community. Um, but, after pandemic change situation, economic situation change, yeah, I don't know. Right now, it's more difficult, I think. But I'm thinking
Right.
the future will be changed. And I already spoke with many politics, many representatives here, senators near my house, and of course, nothing happened because
Right.
I have connections. I'm a humble teacher. I'm not politics, and I am an indigenous artist, originally from Peru. I don't know. Maybe I didn't write correctly the your grant to impress the people who are reading this information, but I don't know who can help. That is why I'm here
Right.
and
Right.
putting in front to you the issue of the society, right? Because all the time
Right.
I cannot compete with big organizations, right? After school matters
Right.
have maybe $20 billion a year. So, but I was
Right.
working with them also. But I mean,
Right.
I need a little help,
So,
space or financial. Or I already talked to many politics, and nothing happened because I don't know. Maybe I am not Mexican, or I am not from a culture whose population needs, right?
so
So
you're saying that you're originally from Peru, and the mission of your organization is to uplift Peruvian, specifically indigenous culture. You've been doing it for the past 18 years, but ever since the pandemic, it's been a lot harder to find funding. And you've been talking to politicians and other folks in your area, but you haven't seen a lot of traction. So, I mean, of course, I'm not in development. Obviously, there's the standard approach of hiring a grant writer, possibly partnering with some of those larger organizations to provide you with some support on the grant writing so that you don't have to do it all by yourself. I'm also getting an impression that you're a pretty strong relationship builder. There's a lot of foundations and private donors who donate more so based on the relationships that they have with folks than the like specific text of your grant application. And so it might be smarter to change your strategy on like where you're going to get the money from. But specifically in terms of the government, I would encourage you to keep talking to those politicians and tell them like, hey, I haven't seen anything change. My bottom line is still my bottom line. This is not working. I need solutions. Keep emphasizing that so that when funds do come down the pipeline, they call you like, hey, I just got some money. I know of a nonprofit in California who got $1 million grant from the state of California just because like his representative knew he was about the work he was doing and the money was came available. So he got it. But those things are hard to predict. So I can't say like in 5 years you'll have the money, but keep those relationships alive so that when things do come up, they know to call you.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. We're a little bit over time. If you are not attending the advocating beyond the first 100 days, now would be a great time to hop off. But I'm going to roll straight into that webinar. I'm going to let some folks into the waiting room and we're going to keep it going. Thank you, Aubrey.